Hello everybody out there in the bookverse, it's Stephanie, and today I am back with my third video in my videos that I'm talking about the series that I am reading, but this one is going to be about the series that I am DNFing. These are series that I do not plan to finish, and I just don't really have the desire to read more in this series for whatever reason. Now there are some on here where I'm like, I could potentially come back to it at some point, and we all know that they are all still here in the wormhole jar, so there is a possibility that they could get picked and I would have to continue them even though I don't want to, but in general, these are books that I'm just not going to continue with the series. There are actually quite a few, and a lot of them I do not own. So I have a list of the series on my computer and I am going to be reading from them. I'm probably not going to be holding it the whole time because a lot of these series I actually don't own the books for. So there are probably going to be about as many that I don't own as that I do own. So I can't hold this the whole time. I'm weak. We all know this. The first series is the Lumberjanes graphic novel series. I started this one for a readathon because I thought it might be a nice one to add on as potential graphic novels to read for readathons. I heard other booktubers talk about them and say that they really enjoyed it, and I did not. It just was not for me. It felt fairly immature and the story was kind of nonsensical. I didn't really know what the point of it was, and so I won't really be continuing on with this series. Again, if it comes up, I'm not going to be super mad if the wormhole jar picks it for me because they're very short, but yeah, this isn't something I really need to continue. Next is another graphic novel series, and that is Giant Days. I actually have read, I think, 3 volumes in the Giant Days series, but I just really don't enjoy it. This is just a graphic novel series about these kids at university and their lives, and it just is not for me. I don't really think the humor is that funny. I don't really like the characters. I'm not invested at all. So yeah, this is one, again, I'm just not going to continue with. Another graphic novel series is the Heartstopper series. I know this is probably going to hurt a lot of people because it is so beloved and I know so many people really enjoy it, but I read the first 3 volumes of it, and the first one I loved. I thought it was so good. The second one I liked again. I feel like the third one just was kind of doing the same thing, and I just really didn't care that much anymore. I wasn't invested like I was in the first 2. I felt like the first 2 were a lot cuter, and I was just really loved the cute little romance in it, and I just wasn't getting that as much as we got further on into the story, so I just don't feel like it's one that I need to continue on with. Another graphic novel series, wow, there's a lot of these on this list, is The Invisible Kingdom. This one was fairly intriguing to me. I really liked the art style. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. It is a sci-fi, it has like this mystery, and I thought I was really gonna love it, but I just didn't. I didn't really like the characters. I wasn't really invested in the story. I thought kind of what they were trying to do with it I didn't care about, and so overall this just isn't one that I need to continue with, even though I do think the art is beautiful. Another graphic novel series is Over the Garden Wall. So I actually did read this for a readathon as well, and I thought it was weird. I didn't understand it. There were like 2 parts to the first volume. They didn't seem to connect at all. One of them was this girl like living alone in a house, and was she like talking to somebody in a mirror or something? I don't know. It was very weird. I didn't understand the point of any of that, and I don't really care to continue. I think there may be a TV show of it that maybe I could watch because a lot of people seem to really enjoy it, but yeah, I don't need to continue on with this series. It was just not for me. And then, not a graphic novel series, but a manga series is The Promised Neverland. I read the first one when I thought I'd try to get a little bit into manga. I think it was a couple years ago, and I thought it was interesting. I don't know. The format of it wasn't necessarily to my taste. The art style was different, right? Like, I like the beautiful art styles of graphic novels, and I feel like the manga doesn't really have that necessarily. Plus, a lot of the different like exclamations or the way these children act was just kind of odd to me, and it didn't hit. Like, I just wasn't super invested, even though I feel like it's a very serious thing that's happening here and it should really draw you in. I just didn't really care that much. I thought it was okay, kind of interesting, but I just don't need to continue with it. It's been a couple years and I never really have had any desire to continue with this. Into the actual like solid book series, this one's probably going to hurt some people who love it, but that is the Sword of Truth series by Terry Goodkind. I've actually read the first 5 books in this series, so I gave this series a lot of time and effort, and I just don't feel like it's for me. I don't really love his writing style. I feel like his characters are very pretentious and they just think they're so much better than everyone else. They're like, well, I know so much better, but I'm gonna let everyone figure it out for themselves because, you know, I can't tell them how to be perfect like I am. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're driving me nuts. I need you to stop. And so I don't know. I just like, I wasn't a huge fan of the characterization and I just wasn't invested in it. Overall writing style, plus I hear the author is not actually a very nice person. Actually, I think he passed away. But yeah, this just isn't a series I'm going to continue with. This is an adult high fantasy series, and it's one of them that's like very big, kind of like Wheel of Time, that kind of era, I think. But yeah, this one I'm just not super invested in. Another series that I know is super beloved, particularly on TikTok, is the Mirror Visitor series. And this one I just could not get into. I thought our main character was just dull and kind of boring and annoying to follow. And I didn't really think the world was that interesting, honestly. I didn't really like the romance that I think they were trying to set up. I was like, no, not buying that. And just overall, I didn't really care. And I was kind of annoyed reading this book. So I don't think I'm going to be continuing on with this series. This is a YA fantasy series and it's just not something that's for me. Another YA fantasy series on this list is Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. I know this is just a duology and all I have left is Daughter of the Siren Queen, but the first one was not something that I enjoyed. I felt like it was just way over the top extra. The main character was just obnoxious and I could not stand her. And I think it tried too hard to be like, I'm just so bad and I'm brutal and stuff. And I'm like, no, like this feels quite immature to me. It was trying to be like a little bit more on the brutal side, but it just felt too immature for that. So I was not enjoying my time with it. So I will not be continuing. Another YA series, I'm catching patterns and that is the Michael Vey series. This is a YA like urban sci-fi series of these kids that have powers and they're in high school and there are these people who are trying to get them and use them for their like own ends. I'm not 100% positive on it all. I read it quite a while ago and my niece read the series and absolutely loved it, which is great. I just feel like it's not something that I'm super into. Again, I don't really care. And so I feel like that's the majority of the reason why I won't be continuing with this series. This next series, honestly, I was planning on continuing with it, but it is a adult sci-fi series. I read the first book a couple months ago and I felt like it was quite a slow start, but then I got into it and did quite enjoy it and was planning on continuing, but I think I would only continue it on audiobook. And when I looked, the first one was free on Audible. It was kind of included with my subscription, but then the next ones you'd have to like purchase is what it looked like on my end. I don't know if I wasn't looking at it right. So if I do have to, I don't think I want to continue the series enough to use up my Audible credits because they are like Audible exclusive books. But if I just wasn't looking at it right and I can get them for free like the first one, then I will continue with the series. So this one's like a maybe DNF, just depending on whether I have to buy these books or whether they are free. I did quite enjoy it. It is fairly slice of life. You are like kind of living with these people as they're going about. It does start and it continues, but particularly in the beginning it's very military, like the terminology, the way their life is, like it's very, very military and it feels very like US military inspired. And so I did like it more once we like kind of got a little bit more away from that. And there was this like inanimate object and I really do enjoy that trope in books. So overall, the second half of the book I did enjoy and I would continue, but I don't want to use credits on it. This next series, I should have DNF'd it in the first book. I know I should have, but I continued on to the second one, and it just kind of solidified that the series is not to my taste, and that is the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. This is an adult romance series, and each book follows a different sibling of like the Brown sisters. So you have Chloe and then Danny and then Evie, and they just each get their own love story within these books. And the first one was Get a Life, Chloe Brown. I thought it was okay. It wasn't something I really enjoyed that much. I just felt like her writing style and her way of writing the romance wasn't something that I necessarily felt connected to and really enjoyed. And then the second one, I feel like really solidified that. I did not love it. I just wasn't into these romance books. I wasn't feeling the chemistry, and so I just feel like this isn't something I'm going to finish the third book of. And the final book, I feel like I own this book, but I lent it to my mom potentially to read because I can't find it, and that is The Gilded Ones, or The Deathless Ones is the series by Namina Forna. Yes? Yes. And this is just a duology. The first one is The Gilded Ones. The second one, I think, is The Merciless Ones. This is a YA fantasy series. It's set in this world that is quite patriarchal, and if a girl bleeds gold blood, then she's killed because she is evil. And so we're following these girls that bled gold and now are part of this like military corps, and they're out on these missions. Honestly, The Gilded Ones, I enjoyed quite a bit of it. I had a lot of problems with it, but I did quite enjoy the time in it, but the ending was just not good. It didn't make sense. I feel like the ending almost negated what happened in the rest of the book and made it pointless, and I absolutely hate when books do that. So overall, I did not like it. It annoyed me a lot, and that really bugged me, that aspect of it. So I just don't feel the need to continue on with it because that giant kind of plot hole is just going to ruin it for me. Next, on to books that I do own. This one, again, came off this bookshelf, so it doesn't have its cover, but that is the Criers War duology by, oh, who is it by? Nina Varela, I think? This is the problem with not having a cover on it. How is there no author name? This is ridiculous. Okay, well, this series is a YA fantasy series, and it follows this girl that was made and this girl that was like human. So there's like automatons and then humans, and it is a sapphic romance series. The automaton have kind of taken over, and so we're following them in this world, and I just honestly, I didn't like our main character. I liked the like automaton character better, but overall I just didn't really care about the world, the story, the characters. None of it really gripped me, and so I just don't want to continue with it. This next one might be a little bit controversial because I know so many people adore this series, and that is the Gunslinger series by Stephen King, or the Dark Tower series. The first book is the Gunslinger. I actually only read the Gunslinger, and while I thought it was fairly interesting, I felt like this was going to be a very complex world, complex story, and I didn't enjoy the atmosphere of it in the characters of it enough to invest that much time and brain power into it, because this is quite a long series. I think it's like 8 books long or something. Yeah, it looks like 8 books long. That's just not something that I need right now. This one, I will say, is a possibility of going back to in the future if I do feel the need to kind of binge this series. I think it might be interesting and I could enjoy it, but I just, right now, I don't want to. I would have to reread the first one. I'm not really feeling it. I know that people say this is like one of Stephen King's great fantasy works, and I'm not invested. I didn't really care that much, and I didn't like the atmosphere. I think that had a lot to do with it for me, and the main character wasn't really that intriguing to me either. I did like the parts in the past better than in the present, though, I will say. But yeah, we'll see. This one is a potential maybe to eventually go back to, but not anytime soon. This next one, I don't really know if everyone would count it as a series, but the Ready Player One series by Ernest Cline. I read the first one and absolutely loved it. I think Ready Player One is so much fun. It was really like easy to get into, very plot heavy, and it was very quick paced. This is an adult sci-fi series where you can kind of go into this video game world and exist in there kind of like through, what is it, like artificial reality type things. and I really do quite enjoy it. What is it? Does it say on here? Virtual Utopia is what it's called on here. So I really love the first one, but the second one came out and I have not heard anyone who likes it. I've heard only bad things about Ready Player 2, so I'm just not going to read it because I love Ready Player 1 and it can stand on its own. Another potentially controversial one is the second Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. This one starts with Iron Gold. The second one is Dark Age, I believe, and I did not really like this first one. I really enjoyed the Red Rising trilogy. I thought it was so good. I was so invested. I loved it. I loved the characters, the world. It was so exciting. But this one, I felt like the characters got stupid and we were following characters we didn't even need to be following and their plot lines were kind of pointless. And yeah, overall, this one was just highly disappointing after that first trilogy. And so I don't think I'm going to be continuing on with it. Another graphic novel series is the Ascender series. This is I think the third volume 2. So I've read the first 2 volumes in this series and I don't plan on continuing it. I actually wasn't planning on continuing it after the first one, but my wormhole jar picked it and so I did have to continue with it. I'm not mad because it's a very fast read, but this is the sequel series to the Descender series, which is a sci-fi graphic novel series, and I really enjoyed it, but this one pulled in a lot of fantasy elements that I just really was not a fan of, and I didn't really like where the story was going, and so I just am not going to continue with this. Next series is the Wicked Villain series by Katie Roberts. This is an adult fantasy romance erotica series, and the first book is Desperate Measures. Each book follows kind of a Disney themed couple, and this one was the Jafar Jasmine pairing. I honestly feel like the plots to her books are so ridiculous and they're not well done. I don't really care about the characters. I feel like this is being read for the smut, and that's totally fine. I just think that there are other books who do it better. This next one, I am a little bit on the fence about, honestly. I could see myself being convinced to continue on with this series, and that is the, what is the name of this series? I thought it had a name. Maybe not. But that is the Fate of the Fallen series by Kel Cade. First book is Fate of the Fallen. The second one has come out. I haven't read it, and I just don't really plan to. I didn't love this first book in the series. I don't think the plot was a little bit unusual, but also I didn't really vibe with it. I think some of the humor wasn't to my liking either, and just the characters, I just felt like overall I was not invested. I didn't really care about this world, these characters, this plot, and so I just don't feel any desire to continue with it. It's an adult fantasy series that kind of puts a twist on the Chosen One trope to kind of say, what if the Chosen One dies? So it's an interesting take. I just don't think it was executed that well. The next YA fantasy series I am not continuing on with is the Serpent and Dove series by Shelby Mahurin. I read the first one, Serpent and Dove, and I just didn't really love it. I didn't get the romance, particularly because of the very deep set feelings of some of these characters, and I just can't understand how you can have a romance with someone who absolutely hates who you are as a human being and thinks you should die. So that is just something I just don't think I can get on board with. Plus, I have heard that the second and third books definitely are not as good as the first one, and it didn't really need to be a trilogy. It should have just been a standalone. I didn't really love the first one to begin with. It was very mid for me, maybe a little bit on the lower end, and so I just don't really care to continue anymore. This next YA fantasy series is really old. I feel like it has the vibes of the time that it was written, and that's the Modern Fairy Tales by Holly Black. The first one is Tithe. This series just feels like the early 2000s, 1990s YA fantasy. It's an urban fantasy with fae, and I was not into it. I did not like the character work, the story. I just thought it was all so cringe, and I get it. It is a product of its time, and that's totally fine, but I just do not need to continue with this series. This next one I think might be a YA fantasy romance series, but it could also potentially new adult. I'm not sure. The first one could be YA and be fine, but that is the Air Awakens series by Elise Kova. This was one of my Patreon buddy reads and I really, really wanted to love it. I just didn't. And honestly, none of my Patrons who read it liked it either. I felt like it was quite immature and I didn't like our main character. I didn't really understand her main internal conflict and I didn't understand some of the choices that she made. It was quite dumb. I didn't like, a lot of it just did not make sense to me, and so I wasn't super invested, and a lot of it was her trying to make this decision that I was like, this is the stupidest thing. We all know what you're going to choose, and we don't understand why you're not just deciding. So overall, it was quite frustrating to me, and I thought I would really like it because it's like slow burn romance, it has elemental magic, it has kind of this magical school setting, so I was really excited for it. It just was not a hit for me. I think this next one might honestly be the one I get the most hate for, and that is the Legendborn series by Tracy Deonn. I know. I read the first one, Legendborn, and it's not something I enjoyed. I did not enjoy the love triangle. I felt like it felt mean. Like, it felt like you were using another person to get what you wanted by pretending that you liked them when really you were into somebody else. And I did not enjoy that aspect at all. I feel like the magic was explained in fairly info-dumpy ways, and I didn't like that. And I honestly feel like it had so much potential, and I would have liked it a lot more, I think, if she was actually in college, but she's a high schooler going to college. All these romances are happening with college kids, and I just think that she needed to be college age for me to really actually enjoy this more. But also, it just had a lot of potential, and I didn't enjoy the execution is what it kind of comes down to. I did think the magic and that kind of aspect of it was very intriguing. I just don't think I liked it enough to continue on. And from what I've heard, most people liked Legendborn better than the second one, and I didn't really love Legendborn, so I feel no desire to continue on with it. Sorry. Another YA fantasy series is the Last Star Burning series by Caitlin Sangster. The third book in this trilogy, I've read the first two, and the third one is Dead Moon Rising, and I just don't think I can keep going with it. The main character is so annoyingly insufferable. She thinks that she should be in charge and everyone should be doing exactly what she wants, and she should always make all the decisions, and she's dumb. And she makes bad decisions, and she has no idea what she's doing. I don't know why she thinks she has any kind of, like, right to be in charge. She has no knowledge, and she's just very annoying. She drives me absolutely nuts. So honestly, the main reason I'm not continuing the series is the main character. This kind of brings you back to the dystopian times, though. So if you're wanting a dystopian series and you don't mind a really annoying main character, check this one out, because I think it does do dystopian fairly well, and I think it's an interesting setting and premise. So yeah, that's just not, the main character does not vibe with me. Another YA fantasy series on here that I should not have ever gotten to this point is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series by Stephanie Garber. I should have DNF'd the Caraval series. I didn't like Caraval. I hated Legendary. And what, Finale? That one was like, meh, it was fine. I did not like it. This one, why did I continue reading? I didn't like the first series. This is a sequel series to the Caraval series. This one was not much better. It was a little bit better. But again, I don't think her writing style and her characterization or her world building are for me. I know these are so beloved. People particularly love this book, and I just don't. I thought I might like it because the main character in this one is probably my favorite character from the original series, but it just didn't work for me. Her writing style, the way she like builds her characters and her worlds is just not something that I really enjoy. So yeah, I'm not continuing on with this series. This next one is kind of a series of companion novels, but that is the Practical Magic series by Alice Hoffman. This one is the Book of Magic. I haven't read Practical Magic, which is technically the first one. I've read the Book of Magic and I've read Rules of Magic, and Rules of Magic was okay. I like that one decent, but the Book of Magic was horrible and I hated it. So I am not going to be continuing with this series. This is like an adult urban fantasy series. It follows this family of witches, and This one I did not enjoy pretty much the whole thing, but the ending was so horrible. Like, I can't. I absolutely hate the trope that was used at the end, and they're like, I cannot continue on with the series. I am sorry. Maybe someday I could read Practical Magic because it's like before, but I think that's the only possibility. And that's just because I love the movie so much with Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman. It was just beautiful. So I could potentially read that one, but yeah, this one was not good. And the final series on this list, I'm so sorry this has been such a long video, is the Between Earth and Sky series by Rebecca Roanhorse. The first book was Black Sun, and the second book is Fevered Star. Now, I thought Black Sun was okay. I didn't love it. I thought the ending was not great the way it was done. It felt so abrupt. I just wasn't a huge fan. I felt like it started out so strong. Like, I was super invested at the beginning. I really liked a lot of the characters, and it just kept kind of going downhill and downhill. And then I hated the ending. And then I have heard from people who loved the first book that they did not like the second book. So I was quite on the fence whether I was going to continue or not. But considering people who absolutely loved the first book did not like the second book, I, who was very lukewarm about the first book, will probably not enjoy this one. So unless the third book comes out and is phenomenal and blows people away, I am not going to be continuing on with this series. This had so much potential, though. It's an adult fantasy series inspired by like pre-Columbian Americas, and I just thought it was going to be so much fun, and it just wasn't. It didn't hit. I didn't think the execution was that great, unfortunately. So, I mean, maybe if the third book is just phenomenal, I could be persuaded to read the rest of it, but we'll see. Okay, those are all the series that I have DNF'd. As you notice, there were a lot of them, and that's because there were so many series on my list of series last year. So you'll notice that my list got shrunk significantly because of so many DNFs, and that might need to happen again. I'm going to try to finish as many as possible, but then my next video of DNFs hopefully is, well, obviously will not be this long, but hopefully it's a decent amount. I need to be able to really be a little more harsh about the series that I continue with and not continue reading series that I'm just not enjoying and I'm not into. I think that puts me into slumps when I feel so much pressure to continue on with the series when I really don't want to. I want to be reading books that I really am invested in and love, and that requires DNFing series for me. So that's all for this video, but definitely hit the subscribe button down below and the bell icon so you'll be notified when I post new content, so you will see I think it's going to be my final video about series, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.